Welcome to the Money Love Podcast. I'm your host and money coach, Paige Pritchard. If you're ready to uplevel your results in relationship with money, you're in the right place. Each week, I give you the tools to transform your mindset, manage your emotions, and achieve results with your money you never dreamed were possible. Hi, love. Welcome to episode 6 of the Money Love Podcast, which, surprise, is really just a bonus episode. Truthfully, I'm just impatient. And the thought of having to make you wait another full week for what really is kind of like part 2 to the episode that I released on Tuesday about your budgeting mindset, it just seemed cruel, okay? And just way too long. I don't know if it was just way too long for me, if you feel like it was way too long, but these 2 episodes are really kind of like 2 peas in a pod. And they're both about budgeting. The first one was about your budgeting mindset, and this one is going to be a more tactical how-to episode. And so I just figured instead of having to make you wait an entire week between the 2, I would just release 2 episodes in 1 week because I am just so fired up about this topic. And like I said, I'm just impatient and I just couldn't wait. But listen, before we start, can I ask you 2 quick favors, please? I know everyone always says this and no one ever does it, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Okay, 1, could you just pause this and just take 2 minutes and go leave a review on the podcast on whatever platform it is that you listen to? It really does help the show just gain traction and visibility, and it helps new potential listeners just see the value in what we do here. I would just really appreciate it. Like I said, I know every podcast episode where they're like, stop and leave a review. I hardly ever do unless it's a podcast that I really, really love. But I hope that you're really, really loving this podcast. And if you are, it would just mean the world to me if you could do that. And then 2, while you're listening to this episode, or honestly, just really any episode, take a screenshot or a screen recording of your favorite part and then post it on social and tag me. Again, that just really helps me gauge the content that you guys are listening to and loving so that I can create more of it, right? And then 2, like I said, it just helps spread awareness of the show. So those are my 2 favors to ask of you this week. I do want to just address one question that I've gotten for those of you who have been listening to the first couple episodes of the podcast and just kind of clear it up, okay? I've gotten questions on me like monetizing this podcast and if eventually I'm going to have ads and stuff like that, because I know a lot of podcasts that I listen to and that probably you listen to as well have ads either during the episode or, beginning or end or whatever. And I just want to answer that question and just make it very clear from the get-go that my podcast will not, nor will it ever, have ads. I have made the decision coming into this that regardless of how big this thing gets, I am just not going to monetize my podcast. I want this place to be an area that is free of interruptions, of distractions. I don't want other messages kind of pulling you away. To be honest with you, the podcasts that I listen to that have ads, I skip straight through them. I don't even listen to them. And they're just a nuisance, to be honest with you. My podcast will not now, nor will it ever have ads. So I just want you to know that this can just be a place where you can just come and you and I can work together each week, focused and uninterrupted, okay? Now, I will be talking about my services and what I offer and different ways that you and I can work together, but it will always be relevant. So just know that you can come here and not be bombarded with messages from other companies like trying to sell you stuff. So that's it on just announcements. Okay, let's get into it. The how-tos of budgeting, shall we? I have to start this conversation by talking about what a budget really is and what it isn't. Because a lot, and I mean a lot, you might be one of them, okay? A lot of people get confused about what a budget is and what it means and what it looks like. And it's funny because when people find out that I'm a money coach, there's really 2 things that people always want to start talking to me about right off the bat, which is either budgeting or debt, right? And so they'll start telling me like, oh yeah, I budget, and I use this, or I use that, or this is how I do it. And I kind of just picture myself while I'm listening to this person, like I'm just kind of that emoji that has the really wide, awkward smile, like who's showing all of his teeth. Because in my head, I'm like, oh no, I'm like, this person thinks that they're budgeting, but they're really not. Here are just some really common things that I hear of what people think is budgeting, but really isn't. And again, this will all make more sense by the end of this episode. But I hear a lot that I pay my credit cards off in full every single month. I have my bills on auto draft. I'm just not running out of money. I'm not in the red. I know the amounts of my bills in my head. Like I know what everything costs. Another one that I'm hearing a lot is people just not going below a certain threshold in their checking account. They're like, listen, as long as I don't drop below $1,000 in my checking account, that's all I really care about. If I drop below that, I know I need to pump the brakes. But other than that, like I don't really pay attention to anything. And then also, this is a really common one, people who simply just write down all of their expenses and when they're due. Now, all of these things, like I said, are not budgeting. They're not. And I'm going to clarify. I am not saying that any of these things are bad. Absolutely not. I think pretty much all of these things that I just read, I think they're great things to do, right? I want you to be paying off your credit cards in full. I want you to have your bills on auto draft. I do both of those things. I want you documenting your expenses and writing them down and not running out of money every month. Like, of course. But just doing one or some of those things in and of themselves are not budgeting. And that is because there are 6 stages of budgeting. One stage, I'm going to walk through all of them, but one stage you go through once, and then the other 5 stages you go through every month. And in order to truly be budgeting, you need to be going through the entire cycle in all the stages. And the problem with all of those examples that I just gave you is that they only touch 1 or 2 of the stages. So, what are the stages? Let's just start there. The first stage is what I call the budget preparation stage. Now, this is a stage that you only do the one time. And you really do this stage before you even create your budget. So before we even start creating your budget, I take you through this preparation process. And the preparation process really is an information gathering phase. And what we do here is we gather all of the information that you need to create your budget. So we do things like we identify your financial goal or goals that you want your budget to help you hit. And then we figure out a monthly contribution amount to fund that goal each month. We assess your income and your expenses, and we split out your expenses between needs and wants. We outline your minimum debt payments, and we also pinpoint sinking funds that you want to be contributing to within your budget. And then lastly, and quite possibly the most important and impactful part of this whole process, is going through and identifying all of your annual, biannual, quarterly, or just sporadic expenses that pop up throughout the year that aren't top of mind. And for most people, they totally forget about. I find that this step is a step that hardly anyone does, but it's also the step that when you don't do it, it leads to a tremendous amount of frustration with budgeting, right? Like how frustrating is it when you sign up for something that charges you annually, completely forget about it. A year goes by, you check your bank account one day and you're like, oh crap, I totally forgot I signed up for this. And then it throws everything off. Okay, so this is also a crucial part of the prep process. I have you go through and document all of these transactions and expenses, how much it is, when it's due, what it's for, so that when you create your budget, you can come into a place where you are completely prepared and you eliminate any and all surprise expenses. So these are things like your car registration, your Amazon Prime membership, any subscriptions that you have on your phone that bill you every year, like, MyFitnessPal or something like that. Most of us have a ton of these expenses that we sign up for and then just forget about. But the prep process allows you to go through and list and document all of these things so that you're always prepared. No more surprises. So all of this happens before you create your budget. The next stage is to actually go out and create your budget once you have all of this information gathered. This is what I call the budget creation stage. Now, the next stage is to actually go out and create your budget with all the information that you gathered in the prep process. So this stage is called the budget creation stage. This is what 95% of people do when they budget. And it's the only thing that they do, okay? They just sit down and they just list out all of their expenses on paper or in a spreadsheet or in a software. I use a software called YNAB. YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. Huge fan of it. I'll talk about it more in a second. But in the creation stage, what you're going to do is you're going to go and put your budget into some physical form. This means out of your head and into the world. You're going to create your budget priorities. More on that in a second. And then you're going to put everything in the correct category. So you're going to put, your rent under needs. You're going to put, your Netflix subscription under wants, right? This will all make a little bit more sense in a second. But what I also do is I also add due dates to everything in the name of my category. And then I put everything in order from the 1st to the 31st. I just get everything nice, tight, organized, and in their appropriate categories, ordered correctly. This is simply just you creating your budget, like I said, which is as far as most people get. Because the next stage, which could be the most important stage, is the tracking. Because after you have your budget created, then you're going to go out, start living life, start spending money. And at that point, it's time to start tracking every penny that's coming in and every penny that is going out. If this sounds overwhelming, then what I highly recommend that you do is use some sort of software like YNAB that's going to track this for you. YNAB hooks up into my bank accounts and it just allows me to do this automatically. I'm not manually tracking everything coming in and coming out. Can do it manually, but I recommend doing it automatically because, like I said, it just makes everything a lot less cumbersome. This stage is key. Creating your budget is the plan. Tracking your spending is deciphering how you're doing against the plan. And if you're not tracking what's flowing in and what's flowing out, you're not budgeting. If you're not doing this step, all you're simply doing is just writing down your expenses and really nothing more. So that's why when people are like, I budget, like they just create it. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not budgeting. All you've done is just written your expenses down on a piece of paper. You actually have to track how you're doing against your plan. So then as you start spending money and tracking your activity, more than likely what's going to happen, this happens for me very frequently every single month, is you're going to get to a point where you need to start making adjustments because your spending did not go according to the plan. Life did not go according to the plan. This is nothing to be upset about or make it mean anything bad about you. It just means that things didn't go according to the plan, and that happens all of the time. So many people think that if you have to make adjustments to your budget, that you're failing at budgeting, but it's the contrary. Making adjustments to your budget simply means that your budget is flexible and that it's also able to roll with the punches of life, right? Like we know this, life isn't neat. It's messy and it's fluid and oftentimes unpredictable. And if your budget can't accommodate that, then it's not going to be very sustainable. That's why making adjustments is so key. Doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, it means you're doing it just right. Okay, so that's the next stage is adjustments. After that, you're going to get to the end of a month and it's going to be time to do a month-end wrap-up. So for me, using a software, what this looks like is reconciling all of my accounts to make sure that they match up, which is really just one click of a button. I click a button in YNAB. It says, hey, is this the balance of your account? It almost always is. I click yes. It reconciles everything for me. And then it's also going through and looking through your categories and seeing if you have any deficits. A deficit simply means that you've spent more than you planned to spend. So you're going to have categories that have a deficit, and you're probably going to have some categories that have a surplus, which means that you didn't spend as much as you planned to spend. So what I do is I go through and I reconcile all of my deficits and all of my surpluses. Then what I do is I actually do something with that money. If I have any money left over at the end of the month, it doesn't just chill out in limbo. I decide what I want to do with that money. And there's a couple options, right? And this is the great thing. Like you have so many options, so many different things that you can do. You can simply spend it on something that you've been wanting to buy. A lot of people do that. You can push it towards the next month. So you can keep it in the same category and push it to the next month and just say, I just want this money to roll over and just give me a head start going into the next month. You can, what I call sending it back up to your inflow to be budgeted and spend it on a completely different purpose for the next month. You can put it towards your financial goal. You can put it towards a sinking fund. You can do so many things with it. But the point is just to do something with it. This is what I call zero-based budgeting. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But these are the 6 stages, okay? From the prep process, like I said, that you only do once, to doing a month-end wrap-up. I always describe these stages as building a house, okay? So I want you to think of the preparation stage like you're laying the foundation for your budget or laying the foundation for your house. Then the creation stage is building your house. You're building your budget. The tracking and adjustment phase is like decorating your house and making tweaks and moving stuff around until you get the house exactly how you like it. And then the month-end wrap-up And the deficit and surplus assignment would be like doing repairs to your house that are needed to the home. Think about this. Like you would never just lay the foundation of a home and then not build anything on it. Or you would never just build a home and then just keep it empty and not furnish it. Or you wouldn't build it and then furnish it and then just let it fall apart and not do any necessary repairs. Okay, your budget is no different. And so that is why it requires all of these stages for you to truly be budgeting and be budgeting well. Now, I want to talk about two other things that are critical to the success of my budget. You might have heard about these concepts before, but they are key. The first concept I want to talk to you about is this concept of zero-based budgeting. Here's what zero-based budgeting is. Zero-based budgeting means that every single dollar has a job. Every penny serves a purpose. This basically means that you are going to budget to zero every single month. Now, people get this confused and they get scared off by zero-based budgeting when they hear this because they think that this means that they're going to be left with $0 in their checking account every month. But what you can do is you can build a cushion into your checking account that essentially becomes your new ground zero. So you're never at risk of overdrafting your account, but you're still budgeting every single dollar that you have, and every single dollar has a purpose. Now, I find a lot of people don't do this. They don't implement this concept of zero-based budgeting. And here's what that looks like. That just looks like you having a lot of money that's sitting in your checking account that what I call fluff, or I call it dead space. You don't even realize that it's there, honestly, because you're not zero-based budgeting, but it's just sitting there. It hasn't been assigned a purpose. It hasn't been assigned a destination. And I can't tell you like how many times that I've helped someone with their budget and we start zero-based budgeting and then all of a sudden you can see it in their face. You can see it in their eyes. It's like the lights come on. It goes from black and white to color. They're like, whoa, I've been thinking this whole time that things were so tight, but it's just not as tight as I thought. I just didn't realize it because I've never just looked at it. Didn't have a plan for it. Zero-based budgeting is a key component. It basically means that, like I said, every dollar has an end destination. You're either going to send it to expenses, you're going to send it to your financial goals, or you're going to send it to sinking funds. But every penny serves a purpose. There's no fluff, there's no waste, there's no dead space. That is a key principle. The second key principle that I want to share with you is having a priority for your money. This concept means that you order your expenses from most to least important. And obviously, the expenses that are the most important are going to take first priority with your money, and the expenses that are the least important will take last priority. From what I've seen, most people intuitively know this. Okay, like if we were to have a conversation about this, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I kind of already do that. Most of us realize that it's more important that our rent is paid or that our mortgage is paid and that we have the basic need of shelter covered than paying our Netflix every month or going to a concert, right? Like our brains know this, but very few people actually structure their budget in this way to where this priority and this order is reflected. But what we do is we set up your priorities in order when we are going through the budget creation stage. So here's the order that I teach you how to structure your budget. So your basic needs and necessities come first. These are just going to be your expenses that you need to keep you alive and that you need to keep your livelihood intact. Okay, so here's some examples of what I consider to be needs. Your rent or mortgage, because that's considered shelter, utilities, groceries, basic clothing, okay? I'm not talking about like your 5th pair of Lulu leggings that you have in 4 other colors. I'm saying like basic, so you're not like walking around like you're on Naked and Afraid. Basic clothing, medical, insurance, okay? Those are all things that I would consider needs and also things that help you keep your livelihood intact. So nowadays, honestly, that means your cell phone. A lot of us need our cell phones to just make a living and do our jobs. Gas for your car, if you have to drive to your job, I would consider gas to go in your car a necessity, transportation, things like that. Okay, so those are your needs. Those expenses come first with your money. After we've covered all of your needs, we move on to the second priority, which is your minimum debt payments. Now, I prioritize your minimum debt payments second because after you cover your needs, I want to make sure that you are covering any debt obligations that you have so that you're not being sent to collections, you're not racking up interest, late fees, your credit score isn't taking a hit, right? So after you cover your needs, I make sure that you can cover your minimum debt payments. So this means payments on a car, student loan payments, credit card payments, personal loan payments, anything like that. That comes second. And we're only doing minimum debt payments of what you need to keep you current. Now, if you are in a phase right now where you are trying to pay off your consumer debt and become debt-free, what a lot of people do is they will make payments up and above the minimum payment. Now, that takes me into the next priority, which is your third priority, your financial goals. So we've covered your needs, we've covered your minimum debt payments, and then it's time to fund your financial goal. In the prep process, you identified what you wanted your financial goal to be, and here is where we actually fund it. So you've figured out a monthly contribution amount to hit your goal. So let's just kind of go with what we were talking about. If you're trying to pay off debt early and you've decided, hey, I want to put an extra $500 towards debt every month, this $500 would be your third priority. Okay, so you're going to send that $500 to your extra payments. That takes third priority. Fourth priority are your sinking funds. Sinking funds are smaller pools of money that you're saving up gradually over time. So you fund all of your sinking funds. That's fourth. And your fifth and final priority are your wants. Your wants is the opposite of needs. Your wants are things that are not essential to survival or to keep your livelihood intact. So these are going to be things like eating out, entertainment, subscriptions, beauty, personal care, home decor, traveling, things like that. I understand that a lot of people cringe when they hear that all of those things come last in the priority because that's where all the fun is, right? Like you want those things to come first. And a lot of people misunderstand me and think I'm saying that I don't want you spending money here because it's your last priority. And that's not the case at all. I want you spending money here. I just want you covering your needs, covering your debt obligations, funding your financial goal, saving for future expenses, and then what's left over after that, have a heyday with it. Spend it on whatever you want. Spend it with glee. That's all it means. This is the concept of paying yourself first. This is you covering the needs of your future self and putting those before the desires of your present self. That's what this priority gives you. So when you start a month, you're going to start your needs first. And in the budget template I teach you to create, this is all in order. So your needs are at the very top, right? You fund all of your needs, then you go and you fund all of your debt payments, your goals, your sinking funds, your wants. So those are the two shifts, having a zero-based budget and having a priority for your money. It doesn't matter what system, what process, what format your budget takes, whether you're using YNAB or some other software or just pen and paper, you can absolutely implement these two things. Lastly, to wrap this up, I just want to walk you through what this entire process looks like for me on a normal month. People ask me about this all the time, so I'm just going to walk you through to kind of wrap this up, start to finish, what this looks like for me. Okay, this is just me. Here we go. My husband and I get paid twice a month, both of us, from our corporate jobs. Okay, we get paid on the last day of the month and on the 15th. So based on that schedule, the last day of the month of every month is kind of like the day that I spend the most time in my budget, because I wrap up the current month and then I start a new month with what we got paid that day. So I have my budget template created in YNAB, and my budget template carries over month to month. I do not have to create a new budget template every month. So when a new month starts, I already have all of my categories and all of my amounts created, ready to go. I don't have anything I have to do there. I took that time to initially set everything up, but now that it's set up, I don't have to worry about it. So everything is in order, like we talked about. Our needs are at the top. Then we do not have a section for minimum debt payments since we're consumer debt free. So we have our needs at the top. Then we have our financial goal that we're working to hit at any given point in time. Then we have our sinking funds, and then we have our wants. And so I have a section in my budget as well where all of my sporadic or annual expenses are listed, and I have the dates. So for instance, I have our Amazon Prime membership, I have our Michigan football tickets, I have our car registration, our AAA membership, yada, yada, yada. I have a section with the dates. So every month I go down to that section and I look there and I simply ask, okay, is there anything coming up this month that we need to budget for this month? And I know this because it has the dates when everything is due. So at that point, what happens is in YNAB, I have this big green bubble up at the top of my screen, which if you know YNAB, this is YNAB telling you, hey, you've got money. It's kind of like you've got mail, but it's like, hey, you've got money. Do something with this. And so then what I do is I start to go through and fund all of our expenses for that month. So again, I start with the needs. That gets first priority with our money. Fund our financial goal, fund our sinking funds. And then whatever is left over after that goes towards our wants. My goal every month is to get that big green bubble down to zero. That is how I know that I'm zero-based budgeting and that I have assigned every single penny a purpose. So at that point, my budget is created. Then it's really just time to start going out and living and spending money and having the bills roll in. So like I said, after this, every morning, Monday through Friday, I spend 1 to 2 minutes in YNAB. YNAB links into my bank account. It pulls in all of my transactions. So what I'm doing every morning is I'm simply sitting down, going in, and confirming that YNAB has categorized everything in the correct place. YNAB will learn your spending. So when you first start using YNAB, YNAB doesn't know where things need to go. But as you start categorizing it, YNAB will learn. So when you go to Trader Joe's the first time that transaction rolls in, you're going to have to be like, hey, YNAB, Trader Joe's is groceries. But as you start to go back to Trader Joe's, once you go back again and that transaction rolls back in from Trader Joe's from a second trip, YNAB will be like, hey, Trader Joe's, groceries, right? You'll just be like, yep, that's right. All you have to do is just click one button and confirm that that transaction is supposed to go to groceries. So when I say that I'm confirming transactions that have flowed in, that's all I'm doing. I'm going in, I'm pressing probably 3 to 5 buttons, just confirming things are going to the right category, moving on. I'm checking categories, making sure that we haven't gone over in anything. If we have gone over in a given category, which happens all the time, then what I do is I start moving money around. So I'm like, shoot, we went over in eating out. Happens. Then I say, where can I cover this overspending from? YNAB lets you pick another category just to say, hey, pull money from beauty and personal care, pull money from miscellaneous, pull money from wherever to cover this overspending. With a couple clicks, everything is moved around. It does all the math for me, all the heavy lifting for me. And then I'm out and on with my day. That happens all month long until I basically get to the end of a month and it's time to wrap up the current month and start a new one. So when I wrap up a current month, I do my month end wrap up. I reconcile all of my accounts. I make sure everything perfectly matches what's in YNAB to my bank account, which again is just a couple clicks. I assess any overspending, I assess any underspending, and then if we have any money left over, I decide what I'm going to do with that money. More often than not, just for me, personal preference, I roll it back up into my inflow to be budgeted so that it can be used the next month in whatever category that I want. That's what it looks like for me. Everything else outside of YNAB is automated. The money that I have that's transferring into my sinking funds is automated. Any money that I have that is going towards a financial goal, it's automated. All of my bills are automated. All of my payments are automated. Everything is automated. And this is how I'm able to spend less than 0.5% of my time every single month on my budget and on my money. It runs like a well-oiled machine. Checking in with my budget is truly just one of those daily practices. It's a daily discipline that I have developed that I told you in the last episode, honestly, has just become automatic to me. And it requires such a small amount of my time, but it packs such a big punch with my financial success. The more often that you can check in with your budget, the more successful with budgeting you're going to be. A lot of people get overwhelmed when I'm like, I check in with my budget every day. They're like, I could never do that. I'm like, it's not as complicated and as cumbersome as you think it is when I say that. It's 60 seconds. I'm in, I'm out. Think about this. If you could just give up 60 seconds of social media scrolling a day and say, I'm going to give up 1 minute of social media time and instead allocate that 1 minute to checking in with my money, to checking in with my budget, a year from now, you would not recognize your financial situation. It doesn't take a lot of time and energy to get big, lasting change with your money. One last thing I'm going to talk about super quick, okay? YNAB. I get this question all the time. And I just want to be clear, I am not sponsored by YNAB. Should they sponsor me for how much business I have sent to them? Yes. But do they know? And honestly, it just makes me love them even more because they don't even work with influencers or, I don't even know. I don't even consider myself an influencer, but you know what I'm saying? Like they don't work with people because how they do it is every single one of their customers, they consider a quote unquote influencer. So I have a YNAB link, like a referral link, and all it really gets me when somebody uses my link is a free month. But all YNAB customers have a link when they sign up. So if you become a YNAB customer, you will get a link that you can share with your network. And if anybody signs up using your link, you'll get a free month as well. But I get asked a lot, like, why YNAB over other budgeting systems or tools? And I've tried a lot. I've tried Mint, I've tried EveryDollar, and I prefer YNAB for a couple reasons. One is it lets you create multiple budgets. So I have a budget for personal, but then I also have budgets for my businesses. It is a paycheck system. This is a big differentiator between other budgeting systems. What this means is that it's only going to let you budget out money that you have available to you right now to spend. You're not budgeting out money that you haven't received yet. You're only budgeting money that is available to you. This means that it's both past and future focused. So like Mint, for instance, Mint is a really popular budgeting tool, but Mint is only past focused. Somebody told me this analogy once, and I thought it was really good. They said, think of Mint like a private investigator who's investigating a murder. So they show up and they try to figure out what happened, what went wrong, why was the person killed, but the person's already dead. The harm's been done. There's no going back. And that's kind of how Mint is. You're really just assessing what's already happened in the past. Where YNAB, you can do both. You can look and see what's happened in the past, but also plan out what you want for the future. I also just prefer YNAB over Dave Ramsey's EveryDollar because I am a credit card user and YNAB links to your credit cards and it allows you to use your credit cards like a debit card, which honestly, I will be doing a whole podcast episode on credit cards in the future, but that is a huge, huge plus for me. It's user-friendly, it has reports, it does all the math, all the heavy lifting for you. It lets you move money around really easily. It lets you electronically track sinking funds. Those are the heavy hitters. But at the end of the day, the reason I love YNAB so much is because A, it makes my life so incredibly easy, which I'm all about. And B, it's one of the only budgeting systems that I've found that truly mimics real life and how real life works. And for that, I really, really like it. And that's why I recommend it to everyone so highly. That is, at a high level, my budgeting process. Honestly, if I took you through the nitty-gritty, this podcast would be hours long. There is so much more to cover, okay? So much more. There's sinking funds, there's financial goals, there's using credit cards, there's staying disciplined, there's, not impulse spending. There's so many things that honestly I could walk you through for the next couple of hours, but I know we both have to get on with our day. Next week, we are going to be talking about spending money because a lot of people teach you how to save money, but not a lot of people teach you how to spend it. So next week, we're going to be talking all about spending money. So tune back in on Tuesday and I'll see you there. Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Money Love Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, then I want to invite you to join me in the Overcoming Overspending membership. It's where we take this work deeper and apply the concepts and coaching from each week's episode into your own life. By being a member, you have exclusive access to my Overcoming Overspending process, 10 monthly live coaching calls with me, a private podcast, members-only community, monthly money topic and challenge, bonus courses, and so much more. There's nowhere else like it out there to level up your finances and life. Simply go to overcomingoverspending.com to join, and you can enter in the code MLP30 at checkout to save $30 on your first month inside the membership. See you inside.